Street Fighter Alpha.
Street Fighter Alpha Warrior's Dreams was released on the CPS2 arcade platform in June of 1995, and the Saturn version, which is what you're seeing here, was released a year later in June of 1996. There was indeed a PlayStation 1 version, which was released a little earlier in 1996, around February or so, at least in North America. One unique fact about this game is that it was the first home version of Street Fighter to have a training mode. Both versions of the game also have an arranged soundtrack players could select or stick with the arcade original. The first thing I need to get out of the way is that Street Fighter Alpha takes place after the events of the original Street Fighter, but before Street Fighter II. It was the first non-Street Fighter II game in the series to get released since the introduction of Street Fighter II: The World Warrior in 1991. It followed a similar art style to both Darkstalkers and X-Men Children of the Atom, which both hit the arcade scene in 1994, so that makes sense. And to me, it felt like the next true evolution of the Street Fighter series. The game included a roster of 10 playable characters, including returning favorites Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, and Sagat, as well as classic characters from the original Street Fighter, Birdie and Adon. Guy, from Final Fight fame, made his debut in the Street Fighter universe with Street Fighter Alpha, as well as Sodome, one of the boss characters from the original Final Fight. Wrapping up the roster were two new additions, Guile's pal Charlie and Rose, a fortune teller. There were also three hidden characters, M. Bison, Akuma, and Dan. Dan was a parody character of SNK's Ryo Sakazaki and Robert Garcia. This would actually mark his glorious debut, and eventually the character would go on to become an incredibly popular character for hardcore fans to use when they pretty much wanted to insult someone, because winning with Dan was no easy task as his specials were weaker than everyone else's. The gameplay feels like an extension of Super Turbo, with an improved super combo meter that can be stocked to 3. As you connect with regular and special attacks, your meter slowly fills, and then depending on the number of punch or kick buttons used, you can unleash an increasingly more powerful attack. Let's take Ryu as an example. His special is a Shinku Hadouken, which is done by performing 2 quarter circle forward inputs followed by a punch button. If you stock the entire gauge to 3 levels, you can unleash his most powerful attack by performing the input and then slamming down on all 3 punch buttons. You can also perform alpha counters, which are done out of a block stance and allow you to counter an attack. There are 2 distinct fighting styles you can choose from, automatic and normal. Auto automatically guards against certain attacks, and unleashing a super can be performed by simply pressing the punch and kick of equal strength, but dramatically reduces the super combo meter as a result. Finally, you can choose between normal and turbo modes, but by this point in time, just about everyone would select turbo. There's also a fun nod to the Street Fighter II animated movie in this game called Dramatic Battle Mode, where 2 players, one playing as Ryu and one playing as Ken, can battle M. Bison. It's a cool mode to try out with a friend. Overall, Street Fighter Alpha remains a very fun to play game to this very day, although I will admit it's a bit on the simplistic side compared to what would come with Alpha 2 and 3 a few years down the road. If you're in the market for the Saturn version, it's not terribly expensive, but if you're only going to go after one Alpha game, I would suggest going for 2 or 3, just because they're a little bit more complex and feature more characters. This one though, it brings back a lot of memories for me, because it was released in a time period right where arcades were slowly but surely starting to lose mainstream appeal and success. Within a few years, the arcade scene would be pretty much dead. And for me, I get to relive those awesome memories by plunking in Street Fighter Alpha in my Saturn and having a blast. Now I highly recommend you go check this one out if you haven't done so already.
KO! You win!